Well, it's Monday morning. Hope you had a good rest last night. A little bit later than intended, but we'll get the rest of the week nice and early for you for those who enjoy an early morning. I want to just focus briefly this morning on keeping a right spirit or a right attitude. A definition could be our temperance, disposition of the mind, or a temperament of the mind. I want to read from Proverbs chapter number 25, verse 28. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city broken down and without walls. In our day, we don't really depend upon a city having walls. Walls around a city, of course, would give us the idea of protection, safety, and that was usually the case for many cities for many centuries. That was the way they kept out, for example, wild animals and the enemy. And it could be a detriment as well. It would keep safety, but the enemy could surround and besiege a city and wait until the citizens are ready to surrender without having to attack the city and waste resources. But the writer of Proverbs says, he that hath no rule over his own spirit. Now, the idea there, having rule over his own spirit or having control, having it in subjection, if we could say that. So a person has no control, rule, has their spirit in subjection against temperance of the mind is like a city that is broken down. Uh, the picture here is very intriguing. A city without walls was open for attack. Very hard to defend, is vulnerable to the enemy, and easily destroyed, at least the inhabitants and their dwellings. So if we do not take and accept the responsibility for keeping our own spirit right, we become equally open to attacks. And of course, it all begins in the mind. As we look at the law in grace, we find the time of the law was thou shalt not, dealt with our outward actions. But Jesus comes along and he deals with this with our hearts, where everything begins. And that is within our hearts, our thinking, where we're the seat of our emotions, right? So the law dealt with merely the actions, which to some degree would be easier if not have to deal with the thought mind, but not that God ever didn't care about the thought mind before. But the point is, as we look at our spirit, as we look at our attitude, if we get another word, would be attitude, and if we don't have that. We don't have good rule over that, good control over that, having that in proper subjection, which we can look at, we're going to find ourselves in a great deal of trouble. So once again, let's read Proverbs 25:28. He that hath no rule, or she, the person that hath no rule over their own spirit. So having this in control, having it in subjection to where it ought to be. We're going to look at some things that can affect our spirit, right? But can I end today off with this? And I'm trying to teach this to my children because I have to continually be reminded myself. No one can force me to have a bad attitude. No one can make me have a bad attitude. No one can make me have a bad spirit. That is what I choose to do, right? So someone, waiting at a lineup to check out, and someone jumps in front of me and sees an opening, and they just step in there to go in line because they deem they're in more of a hurry or have more important things. And so that person doing that action can cause me to have a bad spirit. Not that they make me do so, but I choose to allow that action to take my spirit from graceful, righteous, to one of selfishness, and then what was a good spirit turns into a good. So no one can force you to have a bad temperament of mind or spirit. I choose that when we are not governed by the Holy Spirit. We're going to look at some more of that this week. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.